Welcome, everybody. My name's Kim Driscoll, and I work for the New Brunswick Adoption Foundation. I'm very excited to be part of the November Adoption Awareness Month, and my week happens to be adoption. So, this is part of the series that I'll be hosting all week long in regards to education and information that is going to be very valuable to you when you're looking into adoption. And I'm also very excited that I get to have Janet Priddle join us today. So I'm going to get her to introduce herself. Welcome, Janet.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everybody. My name is Janet Priddle, and I am a social worker for the Department of Social Development. My current role is as a P.R.I.D.E trainer, which means that I offer the training that all potential adoptive and foster parents need to take before providing caregiving services to our youth in care in the province. So I cover the Central Zone, which is the Woodstock, Miramichi, and Fredericton areas.
Perfect. Thank you so much for explaining that. So as Janet said, she's a P.R.I.D.E instructor, and that's what we're going to focus on today is P.R.I.D.E. So let's get started with our first question, which is, what is P.R.I.D.E and how do you get registered for P.R.I.D.E?
So P.R.I.D.E is the acronym stands for Parent Resource for Information Development and Education. And so when we talk about P.R.I.D.E, we are talking about a pre-service 9-week training that is meant to provide all participants with some invaluable information to help them make an informed decision about whether adoption is right for their family. So all potential adoptive parents are required to take P.R.I.D.E if they're interested in adopting a child from care in New Brunswick.
Okay, yes, I remember as we had talked about earlier, I had taken P.R.I.D.E years ago as a pre-adoptive parent. I loved it. And I know that it was in person at the time, and now it's online. But I did find that we're still able to keep that connection with other pre-adoptive people that you meet at that time. It's so invaluable to meet others that are going through the similar journeys at the same time, because the shared experiences is really what makes you feel connected to each other, right? So I just took P.R.I.D.E again last year just as a refresher with you, and I loved it. So how do people get started? How do they get registered for P.R.I.D.E?
So if you're looking to adopt and you're wanting to take the P.R.I.D.E training, your first step is actually making an application with the Department of Social Development to become an adoptive family. So you can apply online by going to our social supports mb.ca webpage. There is the application to adopt online there. And so you can download it, and it's on you'll find the link for the application on the page titled Adopting a Child. So if you would actually prefer a paper copy of the application, so you can call our toll-free number, which is 1-833-733-7835 between 8:15 and 4:30 Monday to Friday, or you can dial the 211 number on evenings or weekends. So once you have your application completed, you can email it to adoption@gnb.ca. Or mail it to the social development office nearest you, or drop off your application at any of our social development offices. So once you've completed the application process and a social worker, they've come in, they've completed their initial meeting with your family, and they determine that your family meets the requirements to become an adoptive family, they will refer you on for the P.R.I.D.E training.
Okay, I'm so glad that you said that there's different options because I'm a bit old fashioned and I like pen to paper. I'm not so great at the computer stuff. So I'm glad that there's the option to go online and, print it off and send it in, or that you can mail it in and that you can drop it off, right?
Yes,
So that's
absolutely.
excellent. Excellent. Can you describe in more detail the structure, the time commitment, and the content that you're actually going to cover when you take this 9-week course?
So for our English participants, P.R.I.D.E pre-service consists of 9 online training sessions that each participant needs to complete individually. So if you are part of a couple, you will each need to complete those 9 online sessions individually. And then we have 3 group sessions that are held virtually on Zoom that start the training. So there's one that is how we actually start Pride. It's the introduction meeting, just kind of give an introductory session to Pride itself. So we're going to look at kind of what to expect, what the department does, everybody's different roles, as well as what does the online program itself look like. So we're going to do a little walkthrough with you on how to log in, what that looks like, what the sessions will look like. After this first Zoom meeting, everybody gets their log on information emailed directly to them, and then they have access to the first 5 of the 9 sessions. So we usually allot about a week per session. So we give everybody the opportunity to work through those first 5 sessions over 5 weeks. When that 5 weeks is up, then we will reconvene together for another Zoom meeting to kind of do a check-in, review what you've learned, build on those learnings with conversations, group discussions, activities, so that we can help build on everything that you've learned from the first 5 sessions. So then once you've completed that midpoint check-in, then everybody gets access to the last 4 sessions, and the same thing, we allot a week per session, so you have about 4 weeks, and then we come back together at the very end to do another Zoom meeting where not only are we reviewing what you've learned in the last 4 sessions, but we're having a panel of presenters who come in to talk about what the experience is like being a foster or adoptive parent in New Brunswick. So the total time commitment over those 9 weeks is approximately 35 hours between the online sessions and the Zoom calls. But because the online sessions are individual work, it really is at your own pace. So you don't need to sit down and complete an entire session at once. You have the opportunity to go in and work at your own pace, and then walk away and come back and pick up right where you've left off again. So as I had mentioned, that's kind of the process for our English participants. We are currently in the process of translating our P.R.I.D.E online into French. And so in that process, our French participants will take P.R.I.D.E through 9 online Zoom sessions that are led by a P.R.I.D.E trainer.
I love that you said that you could break down that 35-hour commitment where you can, because I've logged on to my computer, I've started it, week 1 session, week 1, and then I've had to step away, come back. It was so easy to do that way. It wasn't like you had to say, okay, I have to do 2 solid hours right now, especially where if you already have a full-time job or other commitments, you really can make it any time of the day. You could start it at 9 or 9:30 and do a half hour and then go back on at 6:30 at night and finish the next hour and a half. So that flexibility in the online program is phenomenal to me. It was great.
Absolutely. We know people are busy, so it gives them the opportunity to work at it when they have the time and fit it in amongst their daily busy schedules.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so the next question I had was, what is the expected outcome for those who complete the P.R.I.D.E course?
So when we look at the expected outcome, the 9 sessions are really structured so that while you're building skills and increasing knowledge around the topics of the sessions, so our 9 sessions are looking at just connecting with P.R.I.D.E, and then we're looking at teamwork towards permanence and how everybody works as a team together. We're looking at developmental needs around attachment and loss, and then really strengthening family relationships and looking at the people who are in our children's lives and how do we maintain and strengthen those relationships and connections. We're looking at developmental needs around discipline, continuing family relationships, planning for change, what that's going to look like once you have a child placed within your home, and what to expect over the first couple hours, days, and weeks, and then making an informed decision. And so when we talk about what is the expected outcome, we're really going to look to see that you've developed skills around all of those areas, and build on your knowledge, but also that we have 6 core competencies that we hope that people will have the skills in at the end of P.R.I.D.E. And so our 6 core competencies are protecting and nurturing children, meeting developmental needs and addressing developmental delays, supporting relationships between children and their families, connecting children to safe, nurturing relationships that are intended to last a lifetime, working as a member of a professional team, and reinforcing a child's heritage and cultural identity. So in addition to having those core competencies, we know that pride is a decision-making process. All of the information that you gather throughout the pride training is meant to give you the ability to make an informed decision about whether adoption is right for your family.
And I have to say that when you're talking about those core competencies, they really do develop throughout the 9-week
Mhm.
process. And I have to say that even though I've taken it once years ago, and I took it again just in the past year, it truly did add some knowledge to me. And I still
Mhm.
work in this field, but yet when you get to sit back and you take your time going through it, it asks questions that really make you think. And that's part of even our education with the New Brunswick Adoption Foundation, where we want to educate you. We want to encourage you to learn more about what would adoption look like for
Mhm.
you and those in your home. It's very important to gather this information and get as prepared as you can. The children and your family deserve that, right? So I love that. Okay. What's the next step though? Once Pride is done, what do you do after that?
So after you finish Pride and all the work you've completed, as the Pride trainers, we review that, we pass that on to the social workers who will continue to assess your family. And then they gather more information through a SAFE assessment. The SAFE assessments really consider your lifestyles and relationships with your immediate family, your parenting experiences and expectations, personalities, interests, pastimes. They really do a really deep dive into who you are as a family. So the social workers will meet with your family and discuss adoption with you and any other children that are in your home. Because really our goal in doing this entire process is to make sure we're creating a good match for our children. Because really, as I mentioned earlier, it's when we look at making a match for our children, we're looking for families to meet the needs of our children in care and not children for families. So the information also helps to determine if adoption would be a good choice for your family at this time in your life. And because every family's adoption journey is so different, there is no set timeline that we can put on the next steps of the process. It's an individual journey. And so this process will be different for every family depending on their needs and the needs of the children that we're hoping to match with families.
And that is something that we explain to our participants quite often. It is very individualized.
Mhm.
Adoption is your journey is there's going to be a lot of comparisons to other people, yet but yet every journey is I don't want to say like, private. It's just so unique. It depends on what your criteria was that you filled out in the
Mhm.
beginning. The information you learn at Pride may change that. And you may have an age range of 0 to 5 when you're thinking about doing this. When then you learn more about the children that are in our care. And then it goes 0 to 12, 0 to 16. So I love that you're explaining that it changes and that, the wait times are different for everybody
Mhm.
after your Pride course. So I love that you can say it because we tell people all the time. So now we have you saying the same thing. So that's great. Um, this was a great way to get introduced to what is Pride, what to expect in Pride, and some information about it. But is there anything that we didn't cover today that you would like to say before we end today?
I think the real piece that I would want people to understand is that there really is no commitment to even calling and asking questions. If you're interested at all in understanding more about the adoption process, the Pride training, there's no commitment if you're calling and asking to speak to a social worker and wanting more information. Even completing the Pride training, there is no commitment to move forward just because you do the training. We call it a decision-making process because it gives you all of the information you need to make that informed decision. So if you have any interest at all, these are your opportunities to learn and make that decision with all of the information and your questions answered.
Well said. I love that you added that because it is true that there are people that I met in Pride when I took it 8 years ago before we adopted our son, and they ended up being adoptive parents and foster parents, right? They found out that there is joy to both paths. And they went forward, but yet when they started Pride, they weren't thinking that they go down that path. So I love that the pathways open up with more knowledge, right?
Absolutely. And at the end of every session, there's a check-in on where you are at that point in your journey, because we know with every bit of information that people get, their decisions may change, or what their hopes are may change based on all of the information.
And I tell people there's no question too little or too big, right? Because you're very nervous when you start Pride. Like this is like, these are the people that are going to teach you about everything that you're hoping to learn. And you don't know the process well enough at the beginning. So everything can be kind of stressful. But when you start with Pride, and I'm sure every Pride trainer is just as wonderful, but Janet is really phenomenal at making you feel at home and welcome, and you have time to ask questions. And you don't have to do it in the group setting if you don't want to, right? Like you can email Janet or email your Pride instructor, call them on the phone. They really, you encourage that. You don't want any confusion. You want them to make, like you keep stating, an informed decision
Mhm.
that's right for their family, before you enter into this where you're going to give a child permanency, right? So I love everything you said today, Janet.
Oh, well,
And I thank you so very much for coming. We have so many participants that ask about Pride, that were this information session, I hope, answered all your questions. But if it didn't, Janet, did you want to give it? Is it the 188 again? Is it 188? Was it? Or would you like to
1833.
give? There you go.
Mhm.
Um, or can they email you also with a question?
Absolutely. If anybody has any questions, again, they can call the toll-free number. It's 1-833-733-7835. Or my email address is janet.priddle, P-R-I-D-D-L-E @gnb.ca.
Perfect. Well, Janet, thank you so much for this today. And I look forward to the next time that we see each other on Pride.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kim.